Are Gary Trent Jr.'s minutes about to get stolen? As in a recent report that revealed a relationship between Jordan Nwora and the Raptors organization, there were some discussions about the Toronto Raptors' direction and future rotations, and about how minutes are going to be taken away from some of the vets and to the younger players that are more projects and development pieces for this Raptors team. But randomly, Gary Trent Jr. was added to that sort of list of veterans, despite still being a young guy and playing very well following the OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam trade. So we'll break down that, including a report that reveals Jonas Valanciunas could be had via trade. And given the assets that could be attached in these Jonas Valanciunas trade talks, Toronto Raptors fans have been looking at this as a major opportunity to potentially bring back a fan favorite and also get some cool assets to build for the future. So lots of stuff to break down in this video. Before we do, folks, again, over 58% of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel. We want to keep you up to date with everything regarding this Toronto Raptors team as we inch closer and closer to this year's trade deadline. It's been a wild season so far, so we want to keep you up to date with everything regarding this team. So definitely hit that subscribe button if you're watching the vids and haven't already. But let's dive into the latest news. Basically, could Gary Trent Jr.'s minutes be getting stolen? Now, Doug Smith and Eric Green also dropped a really well-written article regarding Jordan Nwora and his relationship with the Toronto Raptors. Definitely recommend anyone going out and checking that article, but he was almost meant to be a Toronto Raptor, and Doug Smith put out a similar article and broke down some interesting insights regarding Nwora and it's destiny for him to join the Toronto Raptors in this one, saying Jordan Nwora was meant to be with the Toronto Raptors, and now we'll find out for how long, right? His relationship with the Toronto Raptors and training camps and stuff in the past, all that type of stuff. Well, there's an interesting, juicy piece inside of this, because we've been talking about Nwora a bunch in recent vids and over the past week since he's really been breaking out for this Toronto Raptors group. But inside this Doug Smith article, he came out and had a very interesting comment, saying that on a roster that's being built for the long term with Nwora, with Jonte Porter, with Grady Dick, they're going to eat away at the minutes of Bruce Brown, Thad Young, and Gary Trent Jr. As general manager Bobby Webster and Masai Ujiri mold trade possibilities for the three veterans so the young guys can show their stuff. So this I found interesting. Now, Bruce Brown, again, just made a video on Bruce Brown. The entire NBA wants him. I get why he's potentially, having his minutes reduced, why Thaddeus Young, who's a piece that has played really, really well for the Toronto Raptors, since Jakob Poeltl's gone down. Jonte Porter's been dealing with injuries as well lately. So, I mean, those two guys, I kind of get. They're vets in this league, and they're going to, I don't know if Thaddeus Young will command any trade value, but you might want to send him to sort of a destination where he can close out his career competing at an extremely high level. But it's nice to have him sort of in the locker room and to fill in spots like this so the team isn't overtly tanking, isn't putting out a horrible product. I mean, we played a really good game against the Chicago Bulls. Thaddeus Young was a big part of that. I mean, I'm not opposed to keeping Thaddeus Young, especially where I don't think his market is going to be extremely high. Bruce Brown, I think we maximized the value for him at this year's trade deadline. I mean, he's kind of redundant. Even though he's a great player, redundant in terms of what the other young players in this Toronto Raptors group kind of provide. So I think we can get a lot of value for Bruce Brown. But Gary Trent Jr., specifically getting his minutes reduced for Grady Dick, for Jordan Nwora, I find extremely interesting. Now, again, Nwora and Grady Dick provide a lot from the three-point spacing abilities and all that type of stuff, but Gary Trent Jr. is a guy that is very young himself and could potentially be an interesting fit for this team long-term if he's not going to be expensive this off-season. I mean, looking at his stats this year, 12 points per game, 2 rebounds, 1.5 assists, shooting 42% from behind the three-point line here now at this point. But again, he's kind of played his way out of a really sort of big contract extension that a lot of Raptors fans were hoping or were expecting of him. Even this offseason, making around $20 million per year. He ended up picking up his sort of player option for this season. And, especially from the first 2-3 months of this year, played his way out of a big contract. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But if he's going to be cheaper this offseason, then I think it makes sense for Toronto Raptors and Masai Ujiri to seriously look at Gary Trent Jr. being a longer-term piece. Because, I mean, he provides floor spacing. He's shooting the heck out of the ball as of late. And yes, he's inconsistent. That's kind of how it goes. But you get him on a reasonable contract. He is only 25 years old, just turned 25. And we haven't seen insane development from Gary Trent Jr. We have seen him be better on the defensive end. But I think it's safe to say, or it's a safe bet to not expect, improvements in terms of facilitating, playmaking, probably even finishing at the rim, even though there's definitely a world where he does get better at those areas. But Gary Trent Jr., just in terms of his three-point shooting, I don't think should be a guy that's buried on the bench. Sure, we should trade him if we can get a crazy package for him. We don't want to pay him this offseason, yada, yada, yada. But talking about going younger, building for the future, all these types of things. I mean, Jordan Nwora is a guy that's older than Gary Trent Jr. at this point. And again, limited opportunities with the Indiana Pacers this year, averaging 6 points per game. With the Milwaukee Bucks a couple seasons ago, averaged, in the low teens. I think it was 11 or 13 points. I don't have those specific stats there, but he's basically the same age as Gary, 150 days older. But to just be sort of burying Gary Trent Jr. or limiting his minutes, especially at a time where he should be, showing off what he can do, or at least developing him, going one of those directions, I don't think it makes sense to do that with Gary at this point. Now, Masai Ujiri's been pretty he doesn't really talk about Gary Trent Jr. and plans for the future. He never really has, which I've always found extremely weird and interesting. Now, Nick Nurse didn't have a high sort of, at least the burner accounts of Nick Nurse didn't have high praise for Gary Trent Jr. development and stuff. But I don't know. I like Gary Trent Jr. I don't want him coming back on a ridiculously high contract, but he does provide some floor spacing and he fits the timeline for this sort of new look Toronto Raptors. So I'm not eager to just give him away for a second round pick or something, but it's weird that this article came out, and I don't want to see his minutes cut. That's one thing I do want to say in this fit. I don't want to see Gary's minutes cut. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it's good for the Raptors or for Gary Trent Jr. in his own right. But let me know what you guys think about these sort of comments from Doug Smith. Maybe it's just an off-the-cuff thing that we're reading too much into. Let me know in the comment section down below. But the next thing we're taking a look at is Jonas Valanciunas return to the Raptors, to Tay Raptors. I'm always horrible at spelling these chapter things. But basically, Jonas Valanciunas, fan favorite, a guy that was heartbroken. A lot of people are heartbroken when they traded him away, for the Marc Gasol trade, but obviously Marc Gasol was quintessential for us winning an NBA championship, but people have been hoping and praying, silently maybe for a potential reunion with the former Toronto Raptors Lithuanian big man. Well, news has come out from Brian Windhorst recently that basically the Pelicans have sniffed around some potential trades for a center upgrade, utilizing Jonas Valanciunas' expiring contract and draft capital. So basically the New Orleans Pelicans might be willing to offer Dyson Daniels in the right package. Well, the Toronto Raptors have a guy by the name of Jakob Poeltl currently on the roster that would be an upgrade, especially on the defensive end for the New Orleans Pelicans. Not going to space the floor like JV, death taxes and JV threes, but the Raptors have talked about flexibility. They've talked about sort of opening up their options for the future, and JV's on an expiring contract. Dyson Daniels is a piece that, again, is a high potential young player, 21 years old, only averaging 5 points, but 4 rebounds, 2.6 assists in limited minutes. Not a great shooter, but 6'8" that plays the point guard position. He's one of those could be like a point forward sort of type of dude. Again, needs to improve in the shooting areas, but if he can fix his shooting and get some, extended run, he can play make. He's a guy that Raptors fans have been really interested in for a long while. Jakob Poeltl sort of fits the bill for what the New Orleans Pelicans would be interested in. He's a long-term fit, and then maybe again, you can add some draft capital. I guess you're getting Dyson Daniels. That's sort of your draft capital. That's sort of your, sweetener in that package. But I don't know. It's pretty intriguing. Then you also have JV, who's averaging 14 points per game, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, and 56% from the field. Can space the floor from behind the three-point line. Free throws are great. I mean, I'm a big fan of JV. Again, he's going to be doing a lot for you in terms of moving out there laterally in the defensive end. He's also 32 years old, but as an expiring contract, could be a piece that, you retain flexibility, even if you keep him long term. Again, I'd love to see JV just on this team long term because, again, the Raptors like that sort of, regardless of what you want to say about the 6'9" vision, all the 6'9" players and how they built, it's good to have a big man on the rosters to, throughout the course of a long regular season to beef around and bully around with other teams' top big men. But when it comes down to it, the Raptors probably want to close games with a smaller lineup. We've even seen it with Jakob Poeltl on this sort of group. Yeah, Jonas Valanciunas will probably be a little bit cheaper going into next season. He's flexible in terms of what you can do with this contract in the future. He spaces the floor. He hits his free throws. Again, you're losing something on the defensive end there, and that's why the Pelicans would probably be interested in that, along with the security of keeping Jakob Poeltl long term because he has a long term contract. I mean, bring JV home. And Jakob Poeltl's also expressed how he doesn't want to be a part of a tanking team. The Raptors might be going full-blown tank to close out the season. We'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out ahead of this year's trade deadline, but could be a win-win for both sides. Again, the Raptors aren't currently linked here now at this point. It's more so Raptors fans putting two and two together with, this Windhorse report coming out that the Pelicans are sniffing around trades with JV. But let me know what you guys think about all of that in the comment section down below. You guys are the best to make it this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. I'm signing out. Cheers.